What's up YouTube? This is Greg Ferris of MyoBrain, and in this video I'm going to do some education stuff on fiber. So this is something I talk about a lot with a lot of my clients, especially people who are kind of new to tracking their macros or tracking their nutrition. They need a certain amount of fat, carb, and protein. We talk about that a lot. They hear that from their friends, so on and so forth. But then there's this thing called fiber, which we end up talking about somewhere along the line of their consulting journey. And I think there's probably just a little bit of misinformation, maybe it's a lack of information altogether regarding the importance of fiber. So I wanted to kind of create this as a quick educational tool for those people, as well as anybody else who maybe needs some information on fiber. Okay, so I won't get into like the super basic stuff, but of course fiber is going to be a constituent of any carbohydrates. So say if you have 300 grams of carbs per day, a certain percent of that, or a certain amount of that 300 grams of carbs would be fibrous. So it's not going to be in addition to your carbs, it would be in that amount. So maybe if you had 300 grams of carbs that day and 30 grams of those 300 were from fiber. Okay, so it's not additional, it's going to be in that total amount. Okay. We need a certain amount of fiber, and I'll put that in kind of three categories. The first two probably more important for people that I work with, since I deal with a pretty damn healthy population. So the first one's going to be usually for people that are not tracking their food, but even if they are tracking their food, is going to be sort of an unconscious energy deficit, fat loss, satiety effect. So what I mean by that is fiber is going to sit in your gut for a very, very long time, as opposed to something like refined sugar would. And that's going to help promote fullness a lot more than something like a refined product. Okay, so by promoting fullness, right, if you're going to eat, say, 30 grams of carbohydrate, and one of these sources were 0 grams of fiber, another one of these sources were 5 grams of fiber, you'd feel a lot fuller from the 5 grams of fiber kind of meal, right? So the more full you can feel, probably the less overall food you're going to eat. So certainly if this is going to be someone who's not tracking their food, having a high fiber diet, probably one of the best things you can do, because you will unconsciously create an energy deficit, meaning eating less food than you previously were. And of course, an energy deficit is going to be the only way you're going to be losing fat, right? So again, primary reason I think for people who aren't tracking is that unconscious way to reduce their calories. Of course, it's assuming your goal is fat loss, okay? Even for people who are tracking, they're gonna be able to, say, eat that certain amount of fat, carb, protein, certain amount of calories, and stay more full. So again, common sense would tell you, if I can have a client stay full for 2 weeks and lose a pound every single week, they're probably gonna be able to sustain that for a lot longer than a client doing the same thing, but who's constantly hungry, right? We all have a finite amount of willpower. It's ignorant to think that you can just be hungry for 3 months on a diet. So the more full you can feel, generally the better, okay? Second part of that, I'll say actually a conscious fat loss effect there. So what I mean by that is fiber actually doesn't provide as many calories as a non-fibrous gram of carbohydrate. Now this is probably pretty minuscule in the grand scheme of things, but I have seen in practice people increasing their fiber without really increasing their without decreasing their overall calories, and then seeing a reduction in weight loss. And again, that could be something like a bowel movement, that could be just them making better choices with their food intake or whatever, but I have seen that, and I tend to believe the data that I see from my clients quite a bit, because I get very OCD people who track their food just as stringently as anyone in the study would, probably even a lot more. So the conscious fat loss, meaning that, say if someone eats 300 grams of carbohydrate with 5 grams of fiber in the day, versus someone eats 30 grams of carbohydrate and they have 35 grams of fiber during the day, yes, that's a big drastic difference, right? Say that 30 grams difference between the 5 grams of fiber and the 35 grams of fiber, the person over here would actually yield less overall calories from that total carbohydrate amount. right? So even if they both ate 300 grams of carbs every single day, but this person had more fiber, they would essentially use less of that energy because you don't break down a fibrous carb into 4 calories per gram. It's probably closer to 2 calories per gram, which I know it may be 60 calories a day in this kind of instance, but again, I've kind of seen this in practice occur. Even if someone increases their fiber by 10 or 15 grams, it can kind of help them continue to lose weight. Like I said, I'm not always saying it's going to be the energy deficit part of that. I don't think 25 to 50 calorie differences are going to make a pound or two reduction in your weight. It's probably a combination of the energy deficit and it's a lot. You could probably get away with a lot more when you're tracking fruits and vegetables as opposed to grains and rice and things like that. You're probably them staying fuller, so they're probably just making better decisions and not underreporting their intake. Probably a combination of those things. But again, there actually is physiological rationale behind why you want to eat more fiber because you yield less energy from that carbohydrate, right? So what I have down to is just general health, as far as like colon health. I know a lot of people don't come to me talking about general health or they don't want to get colon cancer as far as their goal. But again, that is kind of a selling point as well. Just generally healthy to have a high fiber diet. Make sure you have healthy bowel movements, things like that. So 3 things: unconscious energy reduction, fat loss through just like staying fuller and probably making better decisions. Conscious fat loss because your fibers don't yield as much energy as a non-fibrous carb would. And finally, just general health stuff. Make sure you have a healthy colon. Pretty universally accepted. That's the important thing to do. Okay. My general rule of thumb for people is like 10 to 20 grams for females because their carbs are usually much lower than males. And then 20 to 30 grams for males. That's a pretty good minimum. But if you're in that range, you're probably going to be getting the benefits from all 3 of the things that I've shown. And just like almost anything in life, there's going to be diminishing returns with the more fiber you have, right? So say, to make it easy, those 3 benefits, the unconscious fat loss, and the general health stuff, if you went from having no fiber to 20 grams of fiber per day, you'd probably get a very, great increase in all 3 of those things from 0 to 20. But then 20 to 40, you may see kind of just a slight increase. And if you went 40 to 60, it probably would be almost nothing, right? So it's kind of that diminishing returns effect. The more that you have, the less beneficial even a good thing is going to be. So generally 10 to 20 grams for females is fine. 20 to 30 grams is fine for males. And then probably keeping it below 60 grams is probably a good idea. I don't have any data behind this. I probably could go dig something up, but I think at a certain level, fiber would start to act to have an anti-nutrient as far as absorbing things, because again, it does bind other nutrients to it. So keeping it in the context of everything that we always do with nutrition, of course. If you have 10 grams, or 20 grams, or 30 grams of fiber, probably not going to bind nutrients enough to really make a difference. But if you get stupid, you have 70, 80, 100 grams of fiber per day, then it could be an issue with some micronutrient deficiencies. Again, very small possibility. I don't think eating too much fiber is going to be most of America's problem, of course, okay? And the last thing I had were the sources. So 3 main sources you're gonna get fiber from besides Quest bars, of course. So fruits, vegetables, and then I put grains and beans in another category. And the website I really like for this, and really for any nutrient need, like sodium, potassium, iron, things like that, is whfoods.com. And actually, if you just Google whfoods fiber, you'll find the page that I'm looking at right now. Again, I don't really find it super necessary to memorize these things because you can just Google it. So these are kind of my general recommendations for people, though. I'll give you some actual numbers here to give you an idea of how to get that fiber mark. So we'll start with some fruits. Any berry is going to be very, very high in fiber. Kind of what you want to look at to have a high fiber diet is kind of the percentage of that total carbs to to fiber amount, right? So if you look at maybe a cup of raspberries, and it will yield, say, 15 grams of carbs, and of those 15 carbs, looks like about 8 are fibrous. Okay, that's a very, very good percentage. About 50% of those carbs come from fiber. Okay, so raspberry has 8 per cup, which is very, very good. Looks like strawberries have 3 grams per cup, but again, it ends up being about 3 grams of carbs per 3 grams of fiber per 11 grams of carbs, which is still pretty good. An orange is about the same amount, 3 grams of fiber. We're looking at cranberries at 4.6 grams of fiber, a pear at 5.5. I think an apple is around 3. So again, fruits can kind of get you covered. Those are some of the better ones. Most green vegetables are probably going to be very, very good. Collard greens at 7.6 grams of fiber in a cup. That's right up there with raspberries. Then you have broccoli at 5 grams per 1 cup, and that's about 5 grams of fiber per 11 or maybe 12 grams of carbs, which is very good. Spinach, same thing, 4 grams of fiber, and it's about 4 grams per 10 grams of carbs. Brussels sprouts, cabbage, asparagus, carrots, a lot of those. So again, pretty much any vegetable you're going to have is going to be in that 2 to 3 gram, 2 to 5 gram of fiber per cup, which is very, very good. The last one, grains and beans. So anything like wheat, barley is going to be high in fiber. Any bean product is going to be super high. So navy beans have 19 grams of fiber per cup. Dried beans have 16, lentils 15, pinto, black, lima. They're all pretty similar in that like 10 to 15 mark grams of fiber per cup. Also, it's going to have more calories in that total amount, right? There's going to be some protein in beans. There's also going to be more just general carbohydrates, but it's probably still going to be in that 30 to 50% mark of fibrous carbs to non-fibrous carbs, which is very, very good. So my general rule of thumb for people, again, if you're kind of using fruits, vegetables, grains, and beans in that 3 category, if you just have most of your major meals to have one of those 3 in there, so at every time you sit down to eat, besides like a protein shake or a bar or like a whatever, every time you sit down to eat, if you have either a fruit, a vegetable, or whole wheat grain / beans, you are more than likely going to hit your fiber mark. And if you're not doing that, then if you're still doing that and not hitting your fiber mark, you're probably just not eating enough total food. That's always what I've given people as an outline, is to have one of those at every single major meal. Again, a couple of snacks really don't matter. Yeah, guys, that's pretty much it though. The 3 categories I wanted to break down was kind of why we need it essentially, kind of how much, and then a few sources of it. And again, I kind of named off some general stuff here, but as always with a diet that I promote, we want you to be eating the foods that you enjoy. So make sure you go to that website called WH Foods, and there's literally like probably over 100, maybe like 50 to 100 foods they have of the highest highest foods in fiber, kind of percent-wise of their caloric yield. So that's pretty much it, guys. So hopefully this video was helpful to everyone that had some questions on fiber. Again, very, very common things I talk about, people. I think it's one of those things that we overlook sometimes with our counting our macros and nutrient timing, all of those things. We forget about the importance of fiber. Again, I do think it makes a pretty big difference to the adherence to your diet, to just staying full and not getting super hungry. And I don't have any super great evidence, just anecdotal for this, but I have seen people lose a little bit more weight from not changing their calorie intake, but just having a bigger portion of that calorie intake be higher in fiber. So if you're not in that 10 to 20 grams for women and 20 to 30 grams for men, I certainly recommend doing that thing I talked about, having a fruit, vegetable, whole grain, or bean at every single one of your major meals, and you should be good to go. So that's it, guys. Appreciate it watching this video. As always, if you're new here and don't know who I am, go check out MyoBrainPerformance.com. We have clothing and ebooks and consulting and blogs and all this cool stuff. So go check it out if you like it. And that's it, guys. See you later.